The millionaire lost everything to the cowboy. Elias Mercer was once a name that opened every door in the Western Territories. He was a millionaire railroad owner, known for building long tracks across dry lands and turning small towns into busy trade stops. People used to admire him, fear him, and obey him without question. But times had changed, and Elias was no longer the powerful man he once was. One early morning, Elias arrived in a small frontier town called Red Valley. The town was quiet, surrounded by dry hills and long, dusty roads. A few wooden houses stood under the hot sun, and people moved slowly, as if life itself had become heavy there. Elias stepped out of his broken-down carriage with frustration on his face. He had expected success in his latest business deal, but instead he had lost a large amount of money. His confidence, once unshakable, now felt cracked like old wood. Even worse, word had already spread. People in nearby towns were saying that Elias Mercer was no longer untouchable. Some said his fortune was shrinking. Others said his influence was fading. Elias hated these rumors more than anything. He stood in the middle of Red Valley, adjusting his coat, trying to look as powerful as before, but no one seemed impressed. The town did not greet him like they used to in other places. Instead, they watched him quietly, as if waiting to see what kind of man he truly was without his wealth speaking for him. Not far from the center of town lived a cowboy named Jonah Hale. Jonah was not famous. He did not own large land or expensive things. He lived in a simple wooden cabin near the edge of the valley, where the wind was always strong and the land stretched far into open space. Jonah spent most of his days working with horses, repairing fences, and helping anyone who needed it. He did not ask for payment every time. Sometimes he accepted food, sometimes nothing at all. People respected him not because of money, but because he was steady, calm, and honest. On the same morning Elias arrived, Jonah was fixing a broken fence near the town road. He noticed the broken carriage before Elias even asked for help. The wheel had come off completely, leaving the carriage useless. Elias looked around, clearly annoyed, expecting someone from the town to rush and fix it for him. Instead, Jonah slowly walked over. "You need help with that?" Jonah asked in a calm voice. Elias looked at him up and down. The cowboy's clothes were simple, dusty, and worn. Elias did not like the idea of depending on someone who looked so ordinary. "Yes," Elias said sharply. "And quickly. I don't have time to waste." Jonah did not react to the tone. He simply nodded and checked the wheel. "It will take some time," he said, "but it can be fixed." Elias crossed his arms. "I can pay you well. Just finish it fast." Jonah paused for a moment. He looked at Elias, not impressed by the offer. "I don't rush work just because someone has money," he said calmly. "If it's worth fixing, it's worth doing right." Those words hit Elias in a strange way. He was not used to people speaking to him like that. In his world, money made people move faster. But this cowboy did not seem to follow that rule. As Jonah worked on the carriage, Elias stood nearby, watching. He noticed something unusual. The cowboy was focused, patient, and careful. Every movement had purpose. There was no rush, no greed, no desire to impress. After some time, Jonah finally fixed the wheel. The carriage was usable again. Elias expected him to ask for payment immediately, but Jonah simply wiped his hands and stepped back. "That should hold," Jonah said. Elias frowned. "Name your price." Jonah shook his head slightly. "Help doesn't always come with a price." For the first time that day, Elias felt something uncomfortable. Confusion. He was a man who understood value in numbers, contracts, and profit. But this cowboy seemed to operate on a completely different rule. As Elias prepared to leave, he looked back at Jonah. Something about the man stayed in his mind. It wasn't his skill or his strength. It was the fact that he did not seem impressed by Elias Mercer at all. And that thought stayed with Elias as his carriage rolled forward into Red Valley, deeper into a town that would slowly begin to change everything he believed about power, money, and control. After the broken carriage was fixed, Elias Mercer did not leave Red Valley right away. Something about the town kept him there longer than he planned. At first, he told himself it was only business. He needed to recover his losses, find new opportunities, and rebuild his name. But deep inside, there was another reason he did not want to admit. It was the cowboy. Jonah Hale had left a strange impression on him. Elias was used to people changing their behavior the moment money was mentioned. But Jonah was different. He did not rush, he did not flatter, and he did not seem impressed by wealth. That kind of behavior was new to Elias, and it bothered him more than he expected. So Elias decided to stay in Red Valley for a few days. At first, he tried things the way he always did. He offered money to local workers to improve the town roads. He spoke to shop owners, suggesting bigger stores and faster trade routes. He even promised investments that would bring new buildings and machines. But the response was not what he expected. The townspeople listened politely, but there was hesitation in their eyes. They were not rejecting him openly, but they were not accepting him either. And every time Elias tried to convince them, Jonah's presence seemed to stand in the background like a silent reminder. Jonah continued his simple life. He repaired fences, helped farmers, and took care of injured horses. He never interrupted Elias, never argued with him, and never tried to compete. But people naturally gathered around Jonah when they needed advice or help. One afternoon, Elias walked through the town and saw something that frustrated him deeply. A group of workers were fixing a damaged water line. Elias had already offered to fund a new system with better pipes and faster supply. But instead of accepting his plan, the workers were following Jonah's suggestion of repairing the existing system carefully and slowly. Elias stopped near them, confused. "You are choosing a slow repair over a complete upgrade?" he asked one of the workers. The worker looked uncomfortable. "Jonah said this will last longer, and it costs less. We trust his judgment." Elias felt a sharp irritation rise in his chest. It was not about the money. He had more than enough. It was about control. People were choosing someone else's ideas over his. That evening, Elias found Jonah near the edge of town, fixing a saddle under a wooden shed. The sun was setting, and the sky was turning orange. Elias walked up without waiting for permission. "You are turning the town against progress," Elias said directly. Jonah did not stop working. "I am not turning anyone against anything," he replied calmly. "People just choose what they believe is right." Elias stepped closer. "Everything can be solved with money. Better roads, better homes, better lives. You just refuse to see it." Jonah finally looked up. His expression was steady, not angry. "Money can build things," he said. "But it cannot always build trust." That sentence made Elias pause. He had heard many arguments in his life, but this was not an argument. It sounded like a truth Jonah had learned from experience. Elias crossed his arms. "So what? You think your simple way is better than mine?" Jonah stood up slowly. "I think your way is fast," he said. "But fast things can break quickly too." Elias did not answer. He felt something he was not used to: uncertainty. Over the next few days, Elias tried harder. He offered higher payments, better deals, and promises of growth that sounded impossible to refuse. But the town's response stayed the same. People were polite, but they kept turning back to Jonah for final decisions. It was as if Elias's money had lost its power here. One morning, Elias stood alone near the town center, watching Jonah help a group of children repair a broken cart. Jonah was not giving orders like a leader. He was simply showing them how to fix it, step by step, letting them learn. The children laughed as they worked. The scene looked simple, but it carried something Elias could not ignore: trust. That word kept repeating in his mind. For the first time in his life, Elias realized something uncomfortable. He was not the most important person in Red Valley. His money was not the loudest voice, and his influence was not the strongest force. Jonah Hale, the quiet cowboy, was becoming the center of attention without asking for it. And Elias Mercer, the millionaire who once controlled entire railroads, was slowly becoming just another man trying to be heard in a town that was beginning to listen to someone else. Elias Mercer could no longer ignore what was happening in Red Valley. Every day, the town seemed to move further away from his influence. It was not loud or direct. No one was insulting him or pushing him out. Instead, it was something quieter and more powerful. People were simply choosing Jonah Hale over him. That silence bothered Elias more than any argument ever could. He had faced failures before in business, but this felt different. In business, numbers decided everything. Here, it was something else: trust, respect, and something Elias did not fully understand yet. One late afternoon, Elias found Jonah sitting on a wooden fence outside town, watching the open land. The wind moved slowly across the dry grass, and the sun was beginning to set again. It felt like the same calm world Jonah always seemed to live in. Elias walked up and stopped a few steps away. "This town listens to you more than it listens to me," Elias said directly. Jonah did not look surprised. He slowly turned his head toward Elias. "They listen because they choose to," he replied. Elias frowned. "I offered them progress, money, growth, everything they need." Jonah nodded slightly. "You offered solutions from your world," he said, "not theirs." That answer made Elias more frustrated. "And your world is better?" he asked. Jonah was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up from the fence. "No," he said calmly. "It is not better. It is just different." Elias stepped closer. "Then why do they trust you more?" Jonah looked at the town in the distance before answering. Because I don't try to own their decisions, he said. I help them think, not follow. Those words stayed in the air like dust. Elias felt something shift inside him again. It was not anger this time. It was confusion mixed with curiosity. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind filled the silence. Then Elias finally said, I used to believe money was enough for everything. Jonah looked at him quietly. It is enough for many things, he said, but not for everything. Elias gave a short laugh, but it was not happy. That sounds like something people say when they have nothing. Jonah shook his head. I used to work for men like you, he said. Long ago. Elias narrowed his eyes slightly. This was the first time Jonah had spoken about his past. Jonah continued. I helped build their wealth. I fixed their problems. I made their work easier, but in the end, I realized something. Elias waited, not interrupting. Jonah's voice stayed calm. They owned everything around them, but they did not understand anything around them. That sentence hit Elias harder than he expected. Jonah sat back down on the fence. I lost more than I gained working for them, he said. So I chose a different path, a simpler one where I do not control people, I just stand with them. Elias looked away for a moment. The idea of walking away from power, money, and control felt impossible to him. It was not just a choice, it was his entire identity. But Jonah spoke as if it was a normal decision. After a pause, Elias said, So what now? You just stay here and fix fences forever? Jonah gave a small, calm smile. Fences break. People need help. That is enough for me. Elias shook his head slightly. That is not enough for me. Jonah looked at him directly. Then maybe that is why you are still searching. Those words stayed with Elias long after Jonah stopped speaking. A few days later, the tension in the town reached a quiet breaking point. Elias decided he would no longer try small offers or silent influence. If the town wanted to choose between them, then it would be clear and final. He proposed a public challenge, not a fight, not a conflict, but a test of ideas. Elias would present a full development plan for Red Valley. New roads, new trade routes, faster systems, and strong business growth. Everything he believed in. Jonah would present his own plan. Simple improvements, local work, and steady growth based on trust and long-term stability. The town would decide which path to follow. Jonah did not refuse. He simply nodded and agreed. When the decision was announced, the town became quiet with attention. It was the first time Elias felt like he had a clear chance to prove himself again. But deep inside, something had changed. This was no longer just about money or success. It was about something Elias was still trying to understand. And for the first time, he was not sure if his old way of thinking would be enough to win anymore. The whole town of Red Valley gathered in the open ground near the center. It was the biggest gathering the town had seen in a long time. People stood around in small groups, whispering and waiting. On one side stood Elias Mercer, the millionaire who once controlled railroads and business deals across many lands. On the other side stood Jonah Hale, the quiet cowboy who lived a simple life and never tried to become important. Between them was an empty space where two different visions for the town would be shown. Elias stood tall, wearing his best coat, trying to bring back the confidence he once had. But deep inside, he felt something different. This was not a business meeting. This was not a deal where numbers alone could win. This was something personal, something emotional, and something he was still learning about. Jonah stood calmly, hands relaxed, looking at the people instead of the competition. He did not seem nervous. He did not seem excited either. He simply looked ready to share what he believed was right for the town. The town leader stepped forward and signaled Elias to begin. Elias walked ahead and spread out his plan on a wooden table. He showed drawings, maps, and ideas for new roads, new trade routes, and bigger buildings. His voice was strong at first. This plan will bring fast growth, Elias said. It will connect Red Valley to larger cities. It will bring more trade, more money, and more opportunity. People listened carefully. Some nodded. The idea of fast progress sounded powerful. Elias continued, speaking with more confidence as he went on. He explained machines, business systems, and expansion. Everything sounded modern and impressive. When he finished, there was silence for a moment. Then Jonah stepped forward. He did not bring big maps or expensive drawings. Instead, he brought a simple wooden board with basic marks on it. He pointed at different parts of the town and began to speak. My plan is not fast, Jonah said. It is steady. He explained small changes first, fixing water lines carefully, improving farms step by step, helping workers learn skills so they could build things themselves. making sure the town grew in a way that would not break under pressure. Jonah looked at the people as he spoke, not at Elias. "This town does not need to become something else overnight," he said. "It needs to grow in a way that lasts." The crowd stayed quiet, listening closely. Jonah's words were not loud, but they felt real. People understood them easily. There were no confusing terms, no big promises that felt far away. Just simple ideas that felt possible. When Jonah finished, there was silence again. The town leader asked the people to decide. For a moment, no one spoke. Elias looked around, trying to read the faces in the crowd. He saw respect, but not for him. It was directed toward Jonah, not because Jonah was richer or more powerful, but because people trusted what they understood. Slowly, one by one, people began to support Jonah's plan. It was not a rejection of Elias as a person. It was a choice for something they felt more connected to. Elias stood still as the decision became clear. For the first time in his life, he had not lost because of money, competition, or business failure. He had lost because someone else's way made more sense to people's hearts. The meeting ended quietly. People slowly left the area, talking among themselves about the future of the town. Elias remained where he was. Jonah walked toward him after a while. There was no pride in his expression, no victory in his posture. "You did not lose because you were wrong about everything," Jonah said calmly. "You just saw the world differently." Elias looked at him, tired but thoughtful. "I thought money could fix anything," he said quietly. Jonah shook his head. "Money helps build things," he replied, "but people build meaning." That sentence stayed with Elias longer than anything else that day. Days passed after the decision. Life in Red Valley slowly returned to normal, but something had changed. Jonah continued his simple work, helping where needed, never acting like a leader or hero. The town followed the path they had chosen, slowly improving step by step. Elias, however, did not leave immediately. For the first time, he stayed without a business reason. He walked through the town alone, watching how people worked together. He saw children learning from workers. He saw neighbors helping each other fix homes. He saw progress, but not the kind he used to believe in. One evening, Elias stood near the edge of town where he had first arrived. The same dusty road stretched out in front of him. He remembered how confident he had been when he came here. He had believed he could control everything. Now he understood something different. Control was not the same as respect. Before leaving, Elias walked once more to Jonah's cabin. "I think I understand something now," Elias said. Jonah looked at him quietly. Elias continued, "I did not lose everything. I just stopped seeing what really matters." Jonah gave a small nod. "That is often how it begins," he said. Elias took a deep breath. For the first time, he did not feel the need to prove anything. "I will leave tomorrow," he said, "but not as the man I was when I arrived." Jonah did not respond with praise or emotion. He simply said, "Then your journey is not over." The next morning, Elias Mercer left Red Valley, but the man who left was no longer the same millionaire who had arrived with pride and control. He carried something new with him, understanding. And in the quiet town behind him, a cowboy continued his simple life, never knowing that he had not just helped a town choose a path. He had helped a man find a new one. Part 4.